Well, as you know by now, it's election season. Iowa's already gone through their caucuses, and we're down to just two significant candidates in the Republican primary party, namely Donald J. Trump and Nikki Haley. Well, I needed to know what I wanted to do when it came time for me to cast my own ballot, so I researched each and every one of the candidates. My own caucuses will be coming in another month or so I want to be prepared for it when the time comes. Now, this is not an endorsement, but it is my initial take on the candidate. And here, in this case, is what I found out about Donald Trump. Donald John Trump was born back in 1946 in Queens, New York. He attended a private boarding school, then Fordham University, before transferring to Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, where he graduated with a bachelor's in economics. He obtained 4 student draft deferments during the Vietnam War, eventually being classified as ineligible for service on medical grounds. He married Ivana Zelnikova in 1977, fathering 3 children, then divorced in 1990 following an affair with Marla Maples. He married Maples in 1993, divorcing in 1999 with 1 daughter born. In 2005, he married Melania Naus, with the couple having 1 son together. Trump comes from money, having reportedly become a millionaire by age 8. Much money was loaned and lost in his early years, though he first hit the Forbes list of wealthy people in 1982. He would be put on and removed from this list many times over the years. Donald Trump's career as a businessman and entrepreneur can only be spoken of in summaries and generalities in order to get through really the volumes of information available. It starts with his father's real estate company, Trump Management, renamed the Trump Organization in 1971 when Donald Trump became president of the company. Under his leadership, many projects were developed in Manhattan, including hotels, skyscrapers, and Trump Tower. He also delved into the casino business, opening Harrah's at Trump Plaza in Atlantic City and later buying up and opening a hotel under the name Trump Castle. He also opened the Trump Taj Mahal, also in Atlantic City. All 3 of these ventures eventually filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protections. To pay down his personal debt in this era, he sold off Trump Shuttle Airline, his mega yacht, and other businesses. He later reacquired 2 of those properties, operating them for another decade before filing for bankruptcy again. Of course, then there's Mar-a-Lago, one of the subjects of one of the many lawsuits recently brought to bear against Trump. This private club is also his primary residence and continues to operate. The Trump Organization owns 14 golf courses and manages 3 others under the Trump brand name. The Trump name was also heavily licensed for a variety of products from food to furnishings, totaling more than 50 licensing or management deals. Then there was Trump University, which was a training course for real estate sales, though it was renamed to Trump Entrepreneur Initiative when the state of New York said that calling it a university was contrary to New York state law. The organization was a subject of several lawsuits, including 2 class action suits, with Trump paying $25 million to settle the cases. Donald Trump was quite familiar with legal proceedings over the years, with him and his businesses being involved in over 4,000 state and federal legal actions. While businesses Trump was involved with were frequently required to go through bankruptcy proceedings, Trump himself has never declared bankruptcy. He has published 19 books that were ghostwritten, made cameo appearances in a variety of films and television shows, and was the host of reality TV shows The Apprentice and The Celebrity Apprentice. Now let's talk about Trump's politics. Donald Trump was registered at various times as a Republican, Democrat, Independence Party, Reform Party, and unaffiliated. He even ran for president on the Reform Party ticket in 2000. He flirted with a run against Barack Obama, but never went any further than a speech at CPAC before endorsing Mitt Romney. His announcement of his 2016 run for president caught many off guard with a ride down the golden escalator. With his campaign against Hillary Clinton, it looked like he was the perennial second place with the polling, but by the end of the night, he had won the presidency. His positions were all over the map, often contradictory, with promises attached that would be impossible to carry out without a sympathetic Congress. Even so, much of what he said resonated with the American people in a way that no prior candidate had ever been able to accomplish. He brought significant right-wing voices to the fore, campaigning on a populist nationalist viewpoint with a dash of right-wing fervor that was not seen in more milquetoast politicians such as Mitt Romney. You could write volumes about Trump's first term in office, some good, some bad. Many will remember it as a chaotic time, though one marked with significant improvements in the economy for the average individual. This was cut short by COVID-19, which threw everything into disarray. During his tenure, the national debt increased markedly alongside deficit spending in the federal budget. He did successfully get a tax cut through Congress and began construction on a border wall. However, he wasn't able to get an infrastructure bill through the fractured Congress or get a replacement for the Affordable Care Act. Much of this can be blamed on a congressional picture that was vehemently opposed to Trump and his policies, but he was never able to cut a deal to get his priorities the traction he desired. On the environment, Trump worked on deregulation and rolling back Obama-era policies and withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement. Speaking of deregulation, during Trump's first 6 weeks in office, he delayed, suspended, or reversed 90 federal regulations. Trump largely ignored most of the social hot-button topics, though he did bar organizations that provided abortions from receiving federal funds. Some of the Obama-era policies on LGBT protection in the workforce were also rolled back. He said he opposed gun control, but attempted to enact several gun control measures in response to several mass shootings during his term. Foreign policy really is a whiplash when it comes to Trump. He successfully negotiated things like the Abraham Accords, starting the first real peace process in the Middle East that would result in regional powers actually talking to Israel. He moved the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, recognizing it as the capital of the Jewish state. He engaged in protectionist policies, eventually starting a trade war with China by sharply increasing tariffs on Chinese goods. He praised Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, and Xi Jinping extensively, weakened sanctions that were placed on Russia after their 2014 annexation of Crimea, and sanctioned Huawei for its ties to Iran. He was the first U.S. president to step foot in North Korea, starting a negotiating process on denuclearization that would break down before he left office. Trump's administration signed a peace agreement with the Taliban in Afghanistan that would set the stage for the eventual withdrawal from Afghanistan that was botched by the Biden administration. He also withdrew from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action agreement with Iran, which had not effectively deterred Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. From the conservative perspective, the biggest achievement of Trump's presidency was the appointment of 3 conservatives to the U.S. Supreme Court, though Mitch McConnell was the real driver behind forcing those through Congress. Then we get into controversies and impeachments, so buckle up, people. The Mueller investigation into Russian election interference in 2016 found that the prevailing evidence did not establish that Trump campaign members conspired or coordinated with Russian interference, though it also concluded that Russia attempted to interfere in the elections to benefit Trump. The so-called Steele dossier that these accusations were based on was paid for by the Clinton campaign, with the most salacious parts being apparently made up from whole cloth. A variety of Trump associates were convicted of various charges not directly related to election interference, mostly process charges. Donald Trump was impeached twice on mostly partisan lines by the Democrat-controlled House, but was acquitted both times, also on mostly partisan lines, by the Republican-controlled Senate. These impeachment attempts basically amounted to political theater. The Democrats have been after Trump's hide on any possible reason for the entirety of both his term in office and afterwards. They investigated hush money payments to Stormy Daniels, though nothing really came of the investigation. They've investigated his finances and taxes repeatedly. They said that a phone conversation with President Zelensky in Ukraine amounted to attempted abuse of power while simultaneously ignoring Biden's literal admission to the same. When Donald Trump lost the election of 2020 in some very questionable circumstances, he immediately declared the election stolen and began a hunt for fraud and chicanery. This culminated in the January 6th Capitol riots, which some have labeled an insurrection. The circumstances of this have been, hashed out repeatedly, and nothing I can say will change anyone's mind about the occurrences on that day. This also led to his second impeachment, this time for insurrection, which likewise failed to get a conviction in the Senate. Thus, Donald Trump has never been convicted of insurrection by the only body where that conviction would matter, the U.S. Congress, during an impeachment proceeding. The intervening 4 years has been filled with recrimination, partisan bickering, and legal action, with Trump currently facing 91 indictments. Many of these require particularly unique readings of the laws, with even the recent civil suit by E. Jean Carroll requiring a rewrite of the statute of limitations that literally targeted Trump to successfully pull off. The controversy over classified material is particularly instructive, as it revealed such documents in the possessions of Joe Biden from when he was VP, stored in a garage next to his Corvette, Mike Pence, and several other members of Congress. Again, this apparent targeted attempt at prosecution ended up backfiring against other individuals, though this is currently being adjudicated in the courts as well. Which pretty much brings us to present day. And now my opinions on Donald Trump. So Donald Trump is said charitably a serial exaggerator, though others would certainly call him an outright liar, and depending on the moment, both are likely true. He has managed his companies over time rather like a mob boss rather than a corporate tycoon, with often using threats and intimidation and outright the use of the legal system to avoid having to pay vendors and other people for services rendered. Now, let's talk about Fani Willis and Letitia James. Letitia James over in New York ran on a political campaign entirely based on getting Trump. This included a tremendous partisan political bias, which has been reflected in the procedures over there. Similarly, with Fani Willis, she has been all over the partisan spectrum on this side, where she has been clearly a Democrat operative in the past and is working as one now. And in fact, I heard, and this is rumor mill material, so make certain you treat it with that exact level of information, that Fani Willis actually received a phone call saying that she had to indict, and she had to do it that day. Otherwise, there was some other bad news that was going to come out, and it was going to get run over. So a lot of crazy things going on, and that's just, like I said, rumor mill material. But overall, what you're looking at is a man who effectively is a can of gasoline. Now, if you put the gasoline in the gas tank, such as 2016, when the economy and the world needed some gas to get going, well, you end up in a great situation. You can power your engine. You can improve your economy. You can start things like the Abraham Accords. You can get some things done. Of course, there were some other problems that prevented much of that, but overall, it's a fairly straightforward thing. Gas in the tank makes the engine go. But today, the world is on fire. And when you have a can of gas, you don't pour it on the fire. So with the world on fire today, I'm afraid that Donald Trump may be the gasoline that makes it all explode. Now, we can look at this is another section where I'm just going to quickly touch on this, the mental decline of Trump versus Biden. Biden has clearly been in a severe state of mental decline for some time now. They can say anything they want. It's been clear and obvious to pretty much everybody, at least in my opinion. That is not a medical diagnosis. That is just my opinion on his mental state. But Donald Trump has also been showing signs of some significant mental decline. He actually said that Nikki Haley was the one in charge of Capitol Hill security on January 6th. Nikki Haley was nowhere near the Capitol and was not a member of Congress or Nancy Pelosi, and therefore had nothing to do with the security in that situation. And that's just one minor example. We've seen it across several other examples in recent days. Some of that can be attributed to fatigue or a hectic schedule, but not all of it can. And that's another situation to be looking at. But now we're looking at the win in Iowa. We're now post-Iowa, where Donald Trump got a fairly commanding lead. I think it was 53% or 51%. Either way, it was a majority of the caucus goers in Iowa. Now, it was a very tiny caucus sample. It was even smaller than the average one. Still, that's a pretty clear front-runner status right there. Nikki Haley was third, and she's still in the race, but Ron DeSantis was second and has now dropped out. So really, a lot of people have been saying Donald Trump is inevitable at this point. And maybe he is, or maybe he's not. I just have to point out that the purpose of the primary is to find the absolute best person that we can get for the election, and to declare that everything is over after Iowa, which has not successfully predicted the winner of the presidential election for, I think it's going on 20 years running now. It's disingenuous. It's definitely not all that it's cracked up to be. Now, I do believe that he is being persecuted with lawfare. Now, for those that aren't familiar with the term, lawfare is the use of legal systems and institutions to damage or delegitimize an opponent, or to deter an individual's usage of their legal rights. Often it's used by bringing a tremendous amount of lawsuits against an individual with the intention of bankrupting them and causing them to basically fall apart mentally. That is literally what I see happening right now. We have clear partisan individuals with clear partisan motivations taking on and twisting the laws in order to take on these lawsuits in ways that don't pass actual muster, at least to my eyes. Now, there are lawyers on both sides of this. I'm going to let them debate about exactly what is twisted, what's not, and what aspects of the law are being manipulated to bring these prosecutions about. But I do believe that you can legitimately state that this is lawfare, as in the use of these legal systems to damage or delegitimize an opponent, which does not really speak well of the opposition either. Now, just because I believe that he's being persecuted with lawfare does not believe I necessarily believe he needs to be president again. That's a lot of debating to do and a lot of consideration and prayerful thought. Thus, I am thankful for the primary process where we can have that conversation and that debate to determine who exactly is the best person. Is Donald Trump Reagan-esque? No. And therefore, we need to consider him in the context that is Donald Trump and the context that is the nation that is, at this point, looking for a new leader, one who potentially could be more effective on the world stage. So that's my thoughts on Donald Trump and his information. I tried my best to keep everything as neutral and even as I could. And I want you to know that in all ways, this is intended to help inform you of both the things I see as potential issues and the things I see as being the upsides. Overall, we're looking at a man whose first term as president was rife with trouble, mainly because the Democrats had no clue how to deal with Donald Trump. The thing is, the Donald Trump of 2016 is not the Donald Trump of 2024. The Donald Trump of 2016, all the Democrats would have had to do is say complimentary things about Donald Trump, walk into the Oval Office and say, look, Donald, I want to cut a deal. I have these objectives for my legislation, and I want to cut a deal with you to get these items carried out, and here's where we'll go from here. They'd come up with a deal, and Donald Trump would run roughshod over anybody to get that deal. He wants the opportunity to brag about getting the deal. And he said it before, he will not say negative things about somebody who says positive things about him. So that's the overall situation, is the Dems had no clue how to deal with Donald Trump, and they suffered and made us all suffer through it. So that's the long and short of it. The Donald Trump of 2016 was like that. The Donald Trump of 2024 is a rather different beast. And I'll let you decide how you see him as being different than he was just 8 years ago. And that's everything for today. Thank you for joining me. If you appreciate this content, this information about former President Donald Trump, give me the old thumbs up. Subscribe if you'd like to see future information. I will be looking to put together some information on Joe Biden in the near future with the with the suspension of the candidacies of Vivek Ramaswamy, Ron DeSantis, and several other opponents in the primary field, it looks like things really are narrowing down. The only question at this point is it a one-man show or a two-man race? You have a great rest of your night.